So, what was that key point in the gospel, that very important point? It wasn't about miracles, although perhaps somewhat connected with the miracles that we experienced in the gospel. It wasn't about healing or even raising from the dead. It wasn't about faith, although it certainly is connected to faith. It wasn't even about that little personal touch that Jesus gives at the very end. She's got to be hungry. Don't forget to give her something to eat. So what was it about? What was this key central point? Well, let's take a look at what was happening. Jesus gets off the boat, coming across the Sea of Galilee. His disciples are with him. A big crowd gathers. And a very prominent person, the synagogue official, comes to him and says, "My little daughter, 12 years old, is suffering greatly. She's sick to the point of death. Please come and help her. Please come and lay your hands on her so she'll get well." And without hesitation, Jesus follows, and they are obviously rushing towards his house. Meanwhile, there was a woman in that crowd who was doing what she was not supposed to do. She was ill with a particular type of disease that made her a social outcast, unclean. She was not permitted to be in a crowd of people because somebody might touch her and they would be unclean also. She certainly was not permitted by the law of Moses to reach out and touch somebody like Jesus. And yet, there was something that we might call faith, that was impelling her to put aside those rules, laws, customs, and seek what she needed. And so, that faith gave her courage. And she reached out and touched the hem of Jesus' garment. Now, Jesus had not turned off, like we're asked to turn off our cell phones, right? He had not turned off his power to heal. So he felt that a healing had taken place because somebody had touched him with faith. And so he turned around. Who touched me? Well, everybody's touching you. She comes and says, confesses what she did, possibly risking punishment, perhaps even death in those days. And Jesus engages her in a dialogue in which he commends her faith and assures her that what she did out of faith was right. We haven't yet reached the point that I'm actually trying to get to. But because Jesus let himself be interrupted, word comes from the synagogue official's home, "You're too late. The daughter has died. Don't trouble the master any further." And then Jesus says, wait a minute, let's go. And he who was asked to heal the sick raises from the dead this girl back to life. The important point for us, I think, is Jesus allowed himself to be interrupted. And from that interruption came actually an even greater miracle. From that interruption came multiple examples of how faith actually brings forth the power of God to work in our lives. You've all heard the saying, it's attributed to John Lennon, but it predates him quite a bit, that life is what happens while we are making other plans. That's how this gospel spoke to me. Because by hindsight, I have found, just as anybody here has, many areas, many times, when my own plans in some way got frustrated, got opposed, got put aside, had to be changed. And in every single instance, I have to say, it has been for the better. In fact, I have to say, by hindsight, some of my plans, if I had followed through on them or had been able to follow through on them, would probably have ended up in disaster. No, I'm not going to go into detail on any of those. That's between God and me, okay? But there's a related cartoon that I saw the other day, where basically a person is saying, well, another day has gone by in which I did not use algebra. Can we resonate with that? I mean, so many people look at so many parts of their education and so many other experiences and demands of life simply as jumping through hoops, right? I've had my share of hoops I've had to jump through as well. But again, by hindsight, I really can't identify with that cartoon, even though I never really learned algebra terribly well, but I don't regret having taken it, and it has served, what little I've known of it has served me. Even if it's perhaps to wish I had studied it harder. But the point is, again, there is no part of my experience, and my experience is 47 years as a priest, 12 years as a seminarian, 8 years as a grade school student. I won't go beyond that. And within those 47 years as a priest, I have been to 2 university programs, one of them on the verge of getting a degree. The other, I did get the degree. So I've been through a lot of whole varieties of stuff. None of it has been useless. none of it has been meaningless. In every single event, course, happening, even the challenging ones and difficult ones, I have found there has been grace. Sometimes that grace is, I'm deepened in my understanding and appreciation. Maybe perhaps in my understanding and appreciation for what other people are going through. Sometimes it puts me in an opportunity to help others in ways that I would not. Sometimes it's simply bringing some kind of insight into what it means to be human and what it means to be graced. Now, another story. One I think you're all familiar with, the footprints in the sand. You know that story. At the end of life, you're with Jesus, and you're looking at, with him, looking at your whole life as a walk along in the sand along the seashore. And you see there are two sets of footprints. It's clear. Jesus is walking with you there. There are times when there's only one set of footprints. And you're told, Jesus says, that's when I was carrying you through difficulties. The story doesn't end there. Because there are also sometimes, some places there, where there is a deep and irregular groove in the sand, with rubble and sand splashed all around it. And you say, Lord, what's that? And he said, that's where I had to drag you kicking and screaming. Have you ever had that experience? I know I have. I know that there are so many times when I would just like him to go away because I want it my way. And I find myself dragged, kicking and screaming. Not rescued from something, but dragged, brought through it by his power. The kind of power that I only realize by hindsight, only realize afterwards. So, I don't think any experience, any moment of my life has been wasted, has been without having some kind of grace, some kind of fruit. So my parting advice to you, there is nothing in your life that is wasted. God's grace is found right where you are, not somewhere else. I've known far too many people whose lives have been ruined by the if-only syndrome. Things could be so much better if only. If only that person weren't that way. If only this person hadn't done such and so. If only, if only, if only. And they spend their whole lives reciting that mantra, if only. And letting not only life, but letting the grace of God pass them by. So, God's grace is where you are. However challenging, however painful, however difficult it may be, God's grace is there. Ask him to help you to find it. Whatever your circumstances, ask him to help you to find the hem of Jesus' garment that you can touch. My almost last word. I'm sorry for any hurt or offense that I may have caused any of you, either intentionally or inadvertently. I'm sorry for when my limitations and weakness, my impatience and grouchiness, my clash of priorities have left your needs and expectations of me unfulfilled, even sometimes hurtfully. For this I apologize and I ask your forgiveness. And I, in turn, forgive any wrong that I may feel anyone has done to me. And I simply pray that we together may continue to be servants and instruments of God's healing love for each other. Okay, here's the last word. Simply, thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness, your love, and your support. Thank you for letting me serve you these past 6 years. Please pray for me as I will continue to pray for you. And if you love me, pray for Father Ed. And love and support him as he begins his ministry with you. May God bless you always and in all ways.